There's definitely a thing there with like the motocross and with like even just driving to the track, taking in the scenery and stuff like that really chills me out. And being there and talking to the friends who a lot of these guys are very similar to me, so you already feel you're in a community of everyone's high on energy and adrenaline and definitely good dopamine, waiting to go and race and get out there. And then it's really, really, really exciting. I'm not going to, it's like living on the edge of fear.
Welcome to Season 2 of ADHD Difference. I'm your host, Julie Legg, ADHD advocate, author of The Missing Piece, a woman's guide to understanding, diagnosing and living with ADHD, and an unapologetic doer of many things. This season, we're turning up the volume with a global lineup of brilliant guests, bringing their lived experiences, insights, research, strategies and resources. And of course, along with a healthy dose of humour and humility. Whether you're neurodivergent yourself or just curious, there's something here for every curious brain. Let's dive in. Today, I'm joined by Ryan Turner, motocross rider, content creator, senior recruiter, and proud neurodivergent. After being diagnosed with ADHD, Ryan began looking at his life through a new lens. What once felt like chaos, the intensity, the need for stimulation, and the constant drive, started to make sense. Instead of fighting that energy, Ryan decided to understand it. That journey led to Dopamine Hunters, a growing community, podcast, documentary, and book, exploring how dopamine shapes our passions, fuels high adrenaline pursuits, and drives everything from extreme sports to gaming, creativity, and even everyday habits. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, you describe living with ADHD as
Yeah.
like riding a roller coaster you've built yourself. Exciting, unpredictable, but exhausting when the track never ends. Can you take us
Right.
back to before your diagnosis and what did that roller coaster feel like day to day?
Oh, okie doke. Right. So my family are all neurodivergent, to be quite honest. I got a blood brother and a foster brother, and they were diagnosed quite young, but they were all very external. This is a long time ago now. We're going sort of over 20 odd years ago. Before ADHD was really a big thing, I think, and even nowhere near the amount of research and definitely not social media or anything like that was around. So I think there was like a big stigma on it with most people, whether it was real or not, even back then in the early 90s. But for me, I definitely didn't know then. I wouldn't have considered myself to have been someone who thought differently to everybody else. Even though I know, looking back now, after being diagnosed, how much I was, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So my brother's got most of the attention. My mum would talk and talk and talk and talk. She wouldn't stop. She's one of them, and I'm very similar to her. And my dad, he, I now realize, I just think he's got a lot of autistic traits, right? So this is where I'm actually on the autism waiting list as well, because I've been told that a lot of the things that I do have, and the mannerisms I've got and the way that I do things, I've got autistic traits as well. And the more research I've done on it, the more I'm like, Jesus Christ, there definitely is something there. So just going back to like what the question is, when I was young, I was a much more of a reserved kid, but I'd definitely be staring out of the window and I was very good at masking. And I think back then I just thought I would play the game to sort of like be who people wanted me to be and act along with people's go along basically a really, really big people pleaser. Even though I was really into BMX racing and always being outside and playing, climbing trees and all that sort of thing, but verbally, I think I was much more shy back then. And like, but my brain would be going quick, but I wasn't really getting that out. That's looking back at it now, and then just a quick fast forward, I would say because of my foster brother. he had a social worker. We was at an event and she'd been introduced to my now partner, Claire. She was aware that I was most likely ADHD, but because always been a high achiever, I mean, I'm a carpenter and I always managed to look after myself, whereas my brothers didn't seem to be able to look after themselves as much because I was one of those people that I'd still make it work for me. But really, really struggling with it my whole life. Let's be honest, yeah, and still am now. This will the conversation is going to get a lot deeper than this. So looking back at it, I just think I was like a little kid that was just wasn't even aware that you had these problems, but because you're young and you've got all the energy in you, you could deal with it and not burn out as quick, because your brain is a sponge and you're soaking up the atmosphere. But the thing is, what you're not being given at that age is the tools to be able to
Mm.
actually train your brain to think in the right ways about whether you can recognize whether you're getting burnt out or whether you shouldn't really be procrastinating about things over and over again or ruminating about a problem or reciting a conversation that you're going to have with somebody over and over and over again. All of those sorts of things where this is where the conversation is going to be going to talk about. It's just like, and I'm sure they're doing lots of work with this within schools and communities, but it's being able to get a young person's mind to realize actually what it's like to be ADHD and to learn the triggers that are going to set you off on a wrong direction, like a wrong dopamine hunt, or whether you're going in something, whether you should be channeling into something worthwhile.
I was actually
Yeah,
going to agree with you, just reflecting on the childhood thing. I think the
yeah,
earlier that it is identified and the more tools and the more understanding we can have at a younger age,
yeah,
then we don't need to go through all the things that we both have gone through, the masking,
yeah,
coping mechanisms that might not be healthy or good, but doing what we
yeah,
need to survive in that moment. And if we were to catch it
exactly.
earlier, then it would save us a whole lot of potential grief
Oh,
or misdirection.
much. Much more. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of like all the obvious things that they talk about now, like the rejection sensitivity dysphoria and the things like the. Let's just touch on that for 1 minute. The 20,000 negative comments that a child's meant to have before the age of 14. And I read this like over a year ago, and I was like, it just resonated with me so much that it still carries on into your adult life.
Mm. Mm.
And even now, and I'm going through some issues at the moment, like I said, like I wanted to talk to you about. At the moment, I'll be bluntly honest with you. I'm struggling with it at the minute. I got diagnosed a year back in August. I was on the waiting list for a year and a half. I went completely stone cold sober last year from drink and drugs and sertraline and smoking and everything, which was great it was really hard to deal with, to do, obviously, like for anybody. And I'd done this for two reasons. One, because they told me I had a small blockage in one of my arteries. And the other reason I just done it because I simply had enough. I'd got flu or COVID or whatever at the beginning of last year. And I decided, right, I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not doing anything anymore. I'm not depressed. I haven't got anxiety. They're giving me sertraline, but it was dumbing me down. It was making me slow. I was slurring my words. People were saying to me, you're not as quick, not as sharp, putting on weight. And over the course of the year now, it'd be 14 months in a few days. I've sort of done this full circle of like, started feeling really, really good. Got diagnosed with the ADHD. I've been on a waiting list for a year and a half, by the way, and then chose right to choose. And then they got me done and they said, yeah, 100%. I scored like 87% on the Werner test that they
Mm.
do. And then they said, oh, you still got to wait a year for the medication. So I said, right. But what have you been doing? But they didn't say this, but it's like what the research I've been doing about 85% more chance of being addicted to substances and alcohol because you're ADHD. Like I said to my partner, I said, the thing is that I was searching for something to switch my brain off, to calm me down, to chill me out. So it's either So what I traded it for now is I got back on my motorbike, got back racing again, because I used to do that when I was a youngster, and I had a 15-year gap from that. Got back into motocross. I was fortunate that I could do that, even though it's very costly at the minute. I'm not going to lie. I got back into that and realised that there's this massive community of people doing motocross that are all very similar to me, and they're all chasing this high risk environment to chill them out and to
Mm,
like to get into a tunnel vision moment
mm,
where you could
mm.
like be relaxed. So I think that's why a lot of people ride motorbikes, to be honest, because you do get in that zone and it's a very controlled environment, but you're in complete control. It's just you and the machine and nothing else. And I think that's with a lot of extreme sports. This is where I started seeing, this is where dopamine hunt sort of came from, because I realized that the therapy for people with ADHD, and they know this. The standard one was, oh, someone with ADHD is someone who can't sit still. That's what it used to be. A boy of 9 years old. They never thought about women, never thought about adults. They just thought about, oh, kids. They can't sit still, and they grow out of it when they get older. And we can just either give them Ritalin at school, or we can just take them out the classroom and chill them out for a little bit. But the truth is, you had kids like me, and probably yourself, sat there in the classroom, the hidden 20% sitting there with it internally,
Mm,
going and going and going and going and
mm,
going.
mm.
Also, a big dose of dyslexia on top of that. You can't keep up with the writing on the board. You can't keep up. The numbers are jumping around everywhere. It's very difficult to retain any information because your brain. I don't know if you relate to this. This is was one of my problems as well. I always felt I was in a case of something's going to go wrong. And everyone say you got to be more positive, right? You got to be more positive. And it's a very easy thing to say to someone. And that's just feels like a criticism when you say it to someone like that. You got to be more positive. They don't give you any more reason than why. You don't read all the mindset books and that when you're 6, 7, 8, 9 to 12 years old. But the truth is, I started to realize how important, especially when it comes to autism as well. I've got to say this the it's all very well you trying to teach a kid with ADHD how to deal with their ADHD or how to think better or whatever. But you've got to really back it up with the reasons why, because they want to know why things are the way they are, why you learn things, what is going to be the outcome of me learning this, not just learn it and in a year's time I'm going to do a test, get a given a piece of paper to say I remembered everything, and you might get a job from it.
I wanted to rewind back to just to
Yeah,
acknowledge when you were talking about stimulants and self medication,
yeah,
uh, unhealthy self medication, whether it be
yeah,
through drugs or alcohol. Yeah, looking for that dopamine and then onto that excessive dopamine. And I'll talk with you about
yeah,
dopamine hunters very, very shortly. But I just wanted to
yeah,
go, yes, I completely get
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Seeking some form of dopamine, not necessarily to put us on a high, but just to bring us down to a chill level, which apparently
Yeah.
neurotypicals experience, this sort of level
Hmm.
playing field. You mentioned also about thinking about even into adulthood, looking around, thinking something might go wrong. That traces back to these 20,000 negative or corrective thoughts as a child
Yeah,
and rejection
yeah,
sensitivity when it's almost fear looking
yeah.
for, risk mitigation, I guess.
I've been studying the brain and reading neuroscience books as in a very basic form, trying to retain as much information as I can. And I'm pretty sure most people now know what the amygdala is and know what the hippocampus is. I'm sure, and like people, so you got one that deals with your fight and flight situation, and you got the other part, the hippocampus, which deals with your memory and can retaining information. If one is overworking, from how I understand it in layman's terms, if one is overworking, the other one isn't. Mainly, what I'm getting down to is as a youngster, because I think I was quite shy, especially when I was in my formative years, because we moved around a lot as well. We moved from at really critical ages from like 6 and then 11 to from an age of like going to primary to juniors and then juniors to high school. So I had to make friends again very quickly. So all your fear of having to get that going again, that increases your amygdala to overwork yourself. But also, I think with ADHD people, we tend to catastrophize quicker than anybody else because we're problem solvers. And we are hunter gatherers, and that's how dopamine hunters came out as well. And another idea is the fact that we would have been the hunters, the looking for the danger, keeping the lookout in the night because we can't sleep. I can't sleep. I don't know about you, but I cannot sleep. Since I've been off of everything, I sleep for about 2 or 3 hours a night, and then I'm up again. And I did when I was a youngster. My kids never really sleep properly when they were young. And my mum told me she never slept very well when she was young. So, okay, then I can see this link, see this pattern. But my point is, if you've got a child that's constantly being told he's not quite right, he's got something wrong with him, and then they're constantly being put on edge to be scared, and your amygdala's swelling up, and then you're told, read this book, read this paragraph, remember it, and write it down. If the brain is not in geared for remembering, it's not going to learn it. It's not going to
Mm,
pick it
mm,
up. No matter how
mm,
many times you read it, that's why when we read books, it's very difficult. I have to read my book. I've started reading properly. Not saying I have never read a book, but I started reading properly when I decided that I was going stone cold sober. Started reading about ADHD, started reading about mindset, rewiring the brain, reading about business, studying business, studying just how to live better, you know.
mm, mm.
But once you got that interest-based learning and you become not being scared, then you start retaining the information. So I
Yeah.
can learn all this now, but you wouldn't have been able to learn it when you was 9.
When you were diagnosed with ADHD,
Yeah.
what shifted for you? I mean, was it relief or a
Okay.
validation or confusion or all of the above?
It was hard. That was a real, even though I knew that the answer was going to come back that I am after doing the questionnaire and waiting that long, but I was quite angry with my parents. The
Mm,
fact that my brothers had got all the help and I really hadn't, I've been left to get on with it. I still sort of feel a bit like that now, if I'm honest. I don't even know if they really understand it fully themselves because they've been around, because they're quite old now. And I think that they are too long in the tooth and they've had it from my brothers for so long. And now I think that, like, for me to try and describe all this to them, which I am, and they do know about it, I think that they just find it very hard to digest. I
mm,
think a lot of people are nowadays. So I was quite angry with that side of things. I was really emotional about it. I cried a couple of times, if I'm honest. I was
mm,
like going to the motocross track to the racing with my girlfriend, and I was like opened up to her about it. I was like, this is going to be quite a big deal for me, even in my career, which it has been, which is unfortunate, but like it's the reason why I had to start this because I wanted to make a difference. I also couldn't come to terms with the fact that I think that the reason why my education suffered because of it,
mm,
and I don't think it's fair that nothing was done about it, or
mm,
nothing wasn't made aware of it at a younger age. I feel like I've been robbed of an education, if I'm honest, because of being missed, and especially when you know that there was people around you at the time that thought you were probably neurodivergent. All right, it might have been 20 years ago, I get it, but the thing is, I just think that it's very hard to sit there now and go, oh, it's okay, it doesn't matter, when it really does. Because I think the amount of things that have probably held me back in the past, and I started thinking about my memories started coming back. I thought, well, that's why they said that. That's why they said this, and
mm,
this. And I mean, I went to Westminster back in the summer to a round table meeting with Adam Dance, who's a MP for Yeovil and Somerset, and he was basically advocating for dyslexia to be, oh well, all neurodivergency to be sort of like screened in school at a younger age and sort of like to try and get these kids help quicker, sooner, and faster, and basically stop having this massive hidden percentage of kids that are getting bumbling through school. And what is
Mm.
happening is they're bumbling through school and they're not quite enough to go on the register, but not quite enough to need help, but they're not going to be good enough to pass the grades that the typicals have set you. Get pumped out of the school the other end, and they've got two chances. They're either going to go into a low paid job and maybe get somewhere, or if they haven't been messed up and they've got their head screwed on, start their own company because they got to be their own boss. Because as we have, as I'm learning that fast, it's like I should always need to be my own boss because I can't deal with hierarchy. I can't deal with it. Or unfortunately, these kids, there's a percentage of them they end up in prison. They end up in prison because crime is the easiest way they can get paid or whatever, and they're hanging around with those groups of people. Or the worst, the top of the list, the worst one is they're committing suicide.
Mm.
And
Mm.
there's a massive percentage of that. And
Mm.
I'm not having it. I'm not happy
Mm.
about it. This is why I'm so like wanting to create a media company or whatever you want to call it, a charitable media company, which is what we're doing, by basically telling stories from unsung heroes in sport, and not necessarily just sport, in any in business as well. But the ADHD crew, the autistic crew, the hidden 20% to be able to be sung, to have a platform to say, well, I might not done so great in my grades, or I might not done so great in my education because the education system wasn't built for me, but in the right environment, I can thrive. And we went to Chichester University to talk to a professor to see whether the research is worth doing. And so about extreme sports within ADHD, not just sports as in like exercise. So everybody knows going for a run or going for a walk or any type of exercise does help clear the mind, and it's not just physical, it's mental as well, yeah. And they've done those tests. But what I'm talking about is the shift between being in a high risk environment, but in a safe environment. This is why we're talking about sim racing, so that they can possibly invoke a state of hyper focus, which is obviously what you get with ADHD. It's a lot if you're interest based learning, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm not saying necessarily it's always car racing or motocross or whatever, but we're talking about these sort of areas of life that are exciting and really cool to talk about to a child that would make them be able to lose the stigma about being neurodivergent, but also invoke an area in a classroom or outside of a classroom to learn in a way that is suited to their needs. It's a big project, and I don't plan on it being to be finished for a couple of years, or at least I think we're talking to racing drivers. I'm talking to a female motocross world champion tomorrow. Like especially girls be more included in motorsport. But they also done a little sidetrack of children with neurodiversity and saying how much it sort of brought them on and brought them out of the shell and given them confidence that they need. There's a bit more to it than just playing games on like racing. There's more. It's more about we're going to be setting up like a proper cognitive experiment, probably testing myself first. It's a big deal.
Very, very exciting. Very
Yeah.
hands-on, and no wonder you're absolutely full on.
Yeah. Flat
Um,
out, Judy. Honestly,
Going back to motocross, you're a motocross rider and someone
amateur.
obviously amateur and someone drawn to high adrenaline environments. So we're
Yeah.
talking about this high stimulation pursuits
Yeah.
um, being therapeutic when they're channeled well. And I want to know the line between healthy stimulation and burnout. Because, of course, with our hyperfocus, we
Yeah.
can go
Well,
too
this is the
far.
thing, isn't it? This is the thing. This is the thing. It's the lightning in the bottle. I wish I'd had the answer, to be honest, because I know that there's definitely a thing there with like the motocross and with like even just driving to the track, taking in the scenery and stuff like that really chills me out. And being there and talking to the friends who a lot of these guys are very similar to me, so you already feel you're in a community of everyone's high on energy and adrenaline and definitely good dopamine, waiting to go and race and get out there. And then, and like yesterday, like I said, I literally raced yesterday. It was very wet, very muddy, a lot of reasons to complain, but still, even now, thinking about it, it brings me a lot of joy of the fact that I've gone and raced, yeah. And
And
doesn't matter about where you're placed or anything like that. It's the fact that it's really, really, really exciting. I'm not going to say living on the edge of fear. It's a very hard question to answer. Let's be honest. I mean, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
I love I certainly used to when I was younger, jumping out of planes and bungee jumping, and I had a motorbike.
Mm.
I loved it, and so for me, it was a natural roller coaster. The dips weren't so low. Maybe it was quite a slow decline after a
Yeah,
lovely adrenaline high.
yeah,
Um, but I guess if you were doing it for joy, that makes it easier than doing it for a job. Maybe when you're forced to do it every day, every day, every day, that's when
yeah,
burnout might come when it's a little bit more.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, and I think, I guess it even like with like doing this, doing dopamine hunters. I mean, my partner said that. Said like, you're going, you might get to a point you'll burn out because this is what ADHD people are renowned for having lots of hobbies, aren't we?
Mm,
Yeah. But
yeah.
the thing, but my truth, it's funny because I actually did write a LinkedIn post about this. Literally, I think it was this morning. I was talking about it. It's the fact that people, and my dad used to say to me, say, "Oh, you give up on things, or you give up on things, and you don't see them through." But I'm like, now at 46 years old, I'm saying, I've got to say, Dad, you're wrong. Because everything that I wanted to do, I did end up doing. I just took longer, or I went to it for a bit of time, then came back to it, and then
Mm,
went to it and
mm,
came back to it. But I mean, when I look back through my life, like, so maybe that's what it is like if you're allowed to, if you're allowed to, like these racing drivers are, especially the ones that are in pro level, allowed to achieve what they want to achieve, you will naturally know where your burnout point is and go, well, okay, that's enough. And then I'll go and do something else. But I think the misconception is the fact that people think sometimes look at ADHD as somebody giving up, like when it gets hard. I mean, give up when it's hard. It's more like if they lose interest for a reason, they might give up. But you always seem to find they come back to it. I just think, I mean, I've been into a lot of different things throughout my life. I mean, I learned to play drums. I used to love fishing. I still love fishing. I used to do boxing. I do motocross racing. I do, I'm mad on building radio controlled cars, stuff like that. At 46, I still love all of that. Love all of it. I mean, they say boys never grow up, but I truly believe that a lot of them do. A lot of them, whatever growing up is, I don't even know what that is anymore. What is growing up? I mean, really, what is growing up? I mean, if you're not still having fun when you're older, what was the point? I don't get it, you know?
yeah. Yeah.
But I just think that ADHD people are very much more the explorer type of person, and I think we would have been out hunting, I don't know, wild animals, bring them back home to the village, and you'd have been burnt out, but you'd have chilled out by the fire, and I don't think anybody would have started moaning at you. Oh, you've given up. Get back out there and hunt another animal. Do you know what I mean? I don't think
Yeah.
anybody would have told you that.
No.
And but
Yeah.
nowadays you seem to be told to keep going and going and going and going until you do burn out. And some
Mm,
people seem to be able to have that. And let's face it, right? We are talking about a chemical in your brain that's a deficiency. So if you have a neurotypical person that has a dopamine a dopamine drip that's just going constant and is regulated, then they don't get burnt out as quick. They can go to sleep and they can regulate themselves. And the working day, they're probably only giving the 20%. Whereas I've read this as well. It's like, it would always be going into work giving you 100%. I mean, don't get me wrong, everybody wants to do a good job, but the thing is, you're giving so much that that is what would burn you out. But then you have people that are still doing a good job, but they can just regulate that whole feeling. And it's like, well, if you can't regulate that feeling because of an actual brain chemical, no amount of learning is going to, no amount of one type of learning fits all is going to
Mm.
change that. That's why it's important to develop a way that children can learn in the to either handle their way of their thinking, handle their different types of thinking, and learn in different ways. I think the classrooms are overcrowded for a start. The teachers are burnt out. They especially are in England. They're burnt out. They can't handle it. And if we pile on everything to them to teach to one person at the front of a class to teach 30 kids, but they've all but face it, almost probably more like 40% of them are different to the other 60%. It's not going to work. It's already just to implode. So I think the time is now to for like a total reform on the curriculum probably all over the world.
Ryan, please tell me more about Dopamine Hunters itself. What inspired you to start it? And
Right.
in a nutshell, tell us you've got the podcast, you've got the
Okie doke.
documentary community. Go for it.
My giving up drinking and smoking and the sertraline as well and other substances, but also having the diagnosis of ADHD. But then what really kick-started it is obviously I was going racing to first, and I was enjoying racing. But back in July time, I went into the amateur veteran championship. So like people over 40, but it's like an amateur one, but still quite prolific, quite good. Anyway, I raced on the Saturday. I was doing great, and then on Sunday, in one of the last races, I got taken out and broke 3 ribs. Broke these 3 ribs last year, and then I was sat at home on my own for weeks, not being able to breathe, not really being able to move. And I had loads of footage on my phone. I'd already been journaling. I'd missed this. I've been journaling since January and been writing a lot about the problems that have been happening in my life with how people were treating me because I felt like my, my either my mental health was in decline or something was becoming apparent, and that's how it started. And it was definitely the ADHD. And I was like, well, I was coming to terms with the most likely because I was on the list. I was like, I probably am. I think I am. And I was reading the books, and so all that started coming out into my journals. And it started with me because I'm a carpenter by day, with an idea to make a carpentry company to do with ADHD for people with ADHD to come and make things on an ADHD bench in my workshop and use it as a tool to have a community with those people. Weirdly enough, as I manifested that, and that has sort of come to light, which is crazy. Can't believe it. It's actually come to light because I ended up making that bench throughout last year as well, and I donated it to a guy who runs a charitable community which they it's called Men in Sheds, and they help old people with dementia and people with neurodivergency. And I gave them the bench to use, and now he is the guy that is helping me with Dopamine Hunters, actually
Oh,
helping me with my business plan. It's like he was an angel come out of the sky out of nowhere. He came onto my building site asking for wood. If he lived down the road, and it's only last year, and it's like it's just sort of like grown really naturally, but like organically, but like in a way that like almost like it was meant to happen. So that happened, and then yeah, and then obviously with the racing, I'll just try and in the nutshell sort of thing. I decided that I was going to just do a podcast, literally just a podcast. I thought, well, I'm going to do a podcast, start talking to my friends at Motocross about ADHD and about motocross because I'll incorporate motocross into my ADHD. That's what I thought. I thought, well, I can make something of this, and so that it lets me explain my own story, so I feel better about myself, and I can help other people not feel the way that I did growing up with it, and maybe help some people not feel like they're less of a human being because they got ADHD.
Mm.
You know, that was the truth. That's the be all and end of it. Is I just wanted, I didn't want my kids to go through what I went through at school. I didn't want them to grow up feeling ashamed of it or feeling like, or being made to feel ashamed of it. So I thought, well, if I can build a platform that can show off people that have got ADHD as opposed, and not as a superpower, but just that they're different. There's a different way out there for people to be themselves and not and it create less stigma and just put like really exciting stories on big stages. And that's where my head just went, "Pff, this could happen." Everyone thought I was mad. There's still people that think I'm mad. I think it's such a massive idea. But once I started getting traction on LinkedIn, because I started it on LinkedIn, my partner said, well, you need to put up a LinkedIn page if you're going to get it anywhere. As soon as I did that, and I started learning how to use it because I haven't used a computer for nearly 20 years. I'm a hands-on carpenter, so I'm
Mm.
really, really rough and ready with my content creating, and everybody probably knows this at the moment. But the more that I've done it now, the more people are coming forward to help me in the next series, podcast series, and we've started filming more of the racing. This year, I'm going to have, well, in May, I've actually got a proper TV crew cameraman coming to film us this year. So I just kept on going and going and going and meeting more and more people. And I mean, I've got a list as long as my arm of commentators, racing drivers, motocross people, doctors,
Wow.
nurses, teachers that are all coming forward. And more's happening now. I mean, I can't go over it all. I'm hoping to start making some events here, live in person podcast events, and inviting the racing drivers and the commentators to come to the show to blow up the brand and the name and then get us on TV basically.
The fact that that is your interest, that is your drive, that makes
Yeah,
perfect sense to you and for you. And having people recognize that and come forward and want to be
yeah,
part of the team or the community, you've
yeah,
created something very, very special.
yeah.
Amazing.
I believe so. I think it's growing nicely and organically, of course, because I've gone off on a bit of a tangent because I started it to be motocross, but it branched out into car racing.
What do you think the biggest misconception people have about dopamine and ADHD?
People that definitely aren't in the neurodivergent world think it is some sort of high that is just for making you feel better and finding it in, which some people, I guess they're right. You can find it in food, can't you? You can find it in chocolate. You can get a short burst of it. But I think the misconception is that a lot of people think that all of it is good, and it's not all of it is good. Some of it's really bad, like alcohol abuse or drug abuse. You're doing that for dopamine, but it's the wrong dopamine to be doing.
Mm.
But it's not what you should be hunting at all.
But not all dopamine comes from healthy spaces.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. And I think it's something I struggle with myself is especially when you're in a home environment in the winter in England when it's been raining for 2 months solid and there's not a lot you can do outside and you're like, what shall I do? Well, I've done all my work on this. I've done all, played a game or whatever. And then you're like, oh, I'll go to the fridge and have a snack. Go to the fridge. That sort of thing.
Mm.
And it's like it's training yourself not to do that. That's a tricky one. I think that's a misconception people have.
For someone who's listening who feels that their ADHD makes them too much or too
Mm.
intense, what
Yeah.
would you most want them to understand about how they're wired?
I'd want them to understand that they're not too much for themselves. Because like I think for us people that think a lot, think deeply, I think we get lost in ourselves. And you got to think you're not too much. You're not wrong all the time. Um, and it's okay to be different to everybody, different to a lot of people, you know? I would like to think that this is the part where we're going to start getting some sort of education system that is going to help people not grow up in a world where they have to even think about how they think about themselves, and then they know that they're going to be accepted like everybody else is accepted. But to say to a young person with ADHD, what's the best thing to do? So find something that you're really interested in, and stick to learning about that, and make that your goal for your career. That's probably one of my best ideas, I would say. And then if it changes, don't worry about it. Do that one as well. If you've got four or five things, but learn the best out of them that you can. And if it doesn't excite you and it doesn't interest you, don't worry about it, because it just means that your brain isn't built for that bit. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as you're interested in it, and you will learn as much as you want to learn about it if you like it. So stick to that and then turn that into your craft.
Your perspective's really, really very, very interesting and very excited for your dopamine hunters.
Thank you very
Watch this
much.
space. Yeah, can't wait to see where you go with that. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate it.